So, of course, as soon as I finally get the podcast for Forsaken released and I'm ready to start working on my next scripted video, another game I've been looking forward to decides to just suddenly drop. And being me, I dropped everything just to be able to play this game. And I'm very glad I did. Outcome Memories on the surface is another retake of the Sonic the Disaster formula. Survivors are beloved characters from the Sonic franchise, killers are killers that are creepypasta based, known as EXEs, and if you've played the original Sonic the Disaster prior to its shutdown, you'll probably notice that the gameplay cycle plays out very similar to how the original game played. But even from version 0.1, this game is way more than anything that I would chalk up to just a retake or a recode or anything along that line. I actually think this game has the potential to be one of the best Roblox asymmetrical games that we will see for a long time. I'm even talking better than the likes of Forsaken, which has hundreds of thousands of players every single day. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that this game is already looking to be not only my personal favorite game to play in the genre for quite a while, but just one of the best games in the genre as a whole that we're going to see for a long time. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's perfect, and in this video, I'm hoping to not only express why I think the game can surpass all the others if done right, but I do also want to highlight what can be done to reach that point after reviewing the game itself. Because of the nature of the game currently, I will be reviewing it slightly differently than how I review past games or updates for these games. For this review specifically, I'm going to start with the gameplay first, and then move outwards to other elements that this game has, notably the immersion and the customization. Rather than my usual approach to reviewing games where I usually look from a wider perspective first, things like the atmosphere, like concepts, like mood, etc., and then start to work inwards towards the core gameplay loop or narrative points. I'm doing this for two reasons. One, the narrative this game has is currently kind of sidelined for more of the gameplay elements, and really the only narrative things that we'll see is through environmental storytelling. And two, with this game being so early, I believe it's important to cover the gameplay first and address those weak spots where they are before looking at the outer details while the game is in heavy development like where it's at right now. At the moment, this game has 7 different survivors that players can freely rotate between each round, although there are no duplicates, so you can only play as one character per player, and there's also only one quote-unquote EXE, which is the killer in this game as of right now, which is 2011X. While there are a lot more characters on both sides being planned for release, I actually think it was a good idea to keep the initial roster this small, because it brings up one of the best features that I believe this game has right now. Every character feels really smooth and really polished to play as, between their movement, their abilities, and how the characters interact not only with each other, but as a whole during both chase and what I call downtime, when you're not in chase. Each character has a very unique kit to them that gives them a very unique playstyle to them during their gameplay, and all of them feel really in line with each other with their really good sound effects, their really good animations, but they're also fun and engaging even after multiple rounds of playing the same character if you end up in that situation, or if you have a main and you play them over and over again, they're still just as fun the first round as the 21st round. Most characters are either a frontline sentinel, as I like to call them, or more of a middle court survivalist playstyle. Both feel really balanced, though, between their strong stunning abilities and having the means of being punished by the killer with skillful gameplay. This is for the most part. Put a little asterisk in there. I do have some criticism here that we will eventually get to. Even the only backline character I would say, which is Cream, feels really good, with a unique means of healing that refreshes really quickly and heals a large chunk of health. However, it does render Cream entirely stationary and cannot be cancelled when you're using it unless you get hurt or everyone leaves the vicinity. Think of it kind of as the caretaker ability from Die of Death, but sacrifices being really long to perform and really vulnerable for a lot more healing output. I actually really like the take on the healing ability just because it is very unique and is still pretty balanced with what this game delivers as a whole, which I will get to. The flow of this game is very interesting as well. Compared to other games, this one actually has a very unique balance between 2011X and all the survivors in the game. In a lot of other games, survivors typically are either constantly running away, or if they can fight back, it's very brief moments where they can before you're back into chase. There's not a lot of team play, and there's not a lot of stuff you can do against the killer besides kind of prolong the inevitable. This game, however, feels like more of a constant battle with the killer, since most characters do have the means of fighting back, whether it's in direct confrontations with the killer or from a distance to stall the killer's approach on somebody. At the same time, though, the killer does have nearly constant information on where survivors are and constant means of pressuring them, meaning that both sides are kind of just as powered over the other side. Especially with a coordinated team, this game is more of a long-winded battle for the survivors instead of them trying to just prolong the inevitable as long as possible. And I think this makes the game a lot more fun in my opinion, since it makes everyone feel constantly under pressure to play their best, since at any moment they may be the next player having to duke it out with the killer. With that said, I will admit there are a couple of caveats to this playstyle. The biggest one that I've personally come across is a very specific ability that 2011X has. See, whenever he gets stunned enough times, an ability unlocks which basically buffs everything about him. His speed and damage are increased, he has a passive ability to have constant map awareness on where people are, and most importantly, and probably the worst part about it, the timer pauses when you're in this phase, so your match takes even longer with a buff state the killer has. And mind you, if the exits are open, this also completely stops you from being able to escape during this phase. This throws the core loop of the game completely out the window, since what was this really fun and engaging battle becomes the killer being able to completely overpower even the strongest survivors in the game, and so this mode really sucks to deal with. It essentially rewards the killer for not playing well and being stunned over and over, rather than having proper stun prevention mechanics in the game and rewarding good, skillful gameplay on the killer's end. And thus, it punishes survivors who are really good at playing together and playing well at the characters they're playing as. Luckily, this doesn't happen every round, but I will admit that this ability in particular is probably the only thing that I believe needs a rework in some capacity, whether it's just through heavy balance changes or a full-on rework. One other little gripe that I have is that I did mention that every character kit does feel very unique and holds up really well with each other, but I did mention that this was for the most part. I do think that there are some characters, mostly the frontline Sentinel characters like Sonic, Amy, or Knuckles, that sometimes can fall out of this loop, because there are moments where they are super self-reliant, and it does disrupt the ebb and flow that the gameplay has as this long-winded, teamwork-oriented battle, since that constant fight can turn more into a 1v1 session against the killer, until the killer gets rage mode and then proceeds to just drop everyone in an instant thanks to you stunning them 10 times over. This isn't always the case, and if you can shut down these characters as a killer, it does feel a lot more rewarding. But I do think that in the future, if these characters could be less self-reliant all the time, and instead have to rely on teamwork in order to benefit from their frontline potential, this would just benefit the game greatly as a whole, especially when other characters already fitting that archetype are planned to enter the game. One more thing I want to throw in here before I finish on the gameplay is the final moments of the game, which are dubbed the final 80 for being the last 80 seconds of the round. Now, compared to other games, these are full events that happen in the game as opposed to waiting out the timer and having to escape, again, kind of like other previous games that I've mentioned already, or games inspired by these sort of games in the genre. I like the way that it's implemented here, because it is way more intense when it happens in this game specifically. From the music playing, to the visual effects on screen signaling that the end is approaching if you don't get the heck out of there, and even the environmental events that happen, like how lightning will strike down or a literal nuclear explosion goes off that can kill you instantly if you aren't paying attention. It's really exhilarating, but even after hours of game time, it is still just as heart-racing as the first time I went into it, and it's also pretty balanced. It doesn't feel like anything here is incredibly unfair to play into. Last Man Standing events also return here, and I love how they executed it in this game specifically. In other games, a lot of Last Man Standing moments feel very similar to one another, especially in games like Forsaken, Pillar Chase 2, or Die of Death, where they pretty much quite literally are the same regardless of who is in the Last Man Standing or who is being played, with some very few exceptions per game. Or even worse, games like Piggy Rush that I've talked about before, where they are just incredibly one-sided and incredibly unfun to play into. This game, however, makes every character have a very special Last Man Standing for them, and upwards of a 3 to 4 minute Last Man Standing as a full-on 1v1 rather than just a 1 minute holdout to the very end. I love this. I absolutely adore this system. There was a similar thing done back in the game Dimensional Coalescence that I talked about, albeit slightly different. And I especially love how it works in this game, because rather than it being kind of a horde of people chasing after you for multiple minutes on end that feels near hopeless, this game is a 1v1 through and through. And because of the way that characters are designed in this game, it is a really fun showdown right until the very end. For a game this early into its life cycle, it's insanely impressive to see how fun this game already is for both sides of the spectrum, but also how it manages to strike a really good balance between being pretty darn powerful and also being fair to go up against, again for the most part. I think the unique take on being less of a chase-oriented game and more of a team-oriented fighting-based game really works in its favor here, because it makes playing Survivor a lot more engaging without the usual waiting around during downtime to get chased or helping a teammate out. But also playing as a killer isn't super frustrating despite the amount of stuns in the game once you get a handle on things. There's still a couple things that I do think disrupt this flow a tad, like I mentioned, most notably the rage mode being just ungodly broken at times, and characters who are a little too self-reliant in comparison to the rest of the cast. However, they are aware of these, and I'm also aware that a lot of this is just personal gripes, but that's what opinionated or reviews are here for, so, deal with it. I think that the gameplay here has some insane potential, and from here on, pretty much everything I have to say outside of the gameplay is going to be entirely positive and or extremely hopeful. I specifically refrained from talking about the maps during the gameplay section because I wanted to look at them from more than just the gameplay angle, and that's really only for one specific reason. I actually love what they've done with the maps here, not just from gameplay, but from the immersion and atmospheric standpoints that these maps hold. And even the most hated map currently, which is not perfect, which there's already discussion about it being reworked anyways, I still love this map, and all the maps. Currently there are 4 maps that can be played, which is already a lot more than I expected for being this early into the life cycle of this game. But I love all of them for how they play and how different they feel from each other. Green Hill and Not Perfect both fit as the smaller options in the map pool. Green Hill has a very monotone coloration with little to work with that makes teamwork and abilities even more important here than on the other maps. Meanwhile, Not Perfect is a very brightly colored, vibrant map with a lot of gimmicks to it, being the only one where you can fall off and take damage for doing so, complete with lots of springs and bumpers to play around with during chases. I'm surprised that a lot of people dislike Not Perfect especially, I really enjoy the change in pace from the other maps that this specific map has, even given the smaller map pool currently in the game. And I really like how you have to play this map differently compared to the other ones currently available. Meanwhile, You Can't Run and Hill Gym serve as the more expansive maps for the roster, and like the other two, they still feel super unique between each other and the other maps. You Can't Run has a really cool blend of open space in the middle of the map with tighter corridors or rooms around the sides that make for a really fluid experience during gameplay. Meanwhile, the Hill Gym feels really cramped, sometimes claustrophobic even, and can be really confusing to get around, with the layout being designed in a way that isn't exactly easy to navigate, especially as a survivor character. Some people may not like that so much, and that's okay, but I think it's really great, and it makes that map a lot more memorable on its own. It also leads me to another thing I really adore about these maps, way more than the other Sonic the Disaster games specifically, and that's that these maps nail the feeling that their inspirations are coming off of really well. I understand that the source material for this genre is really lackluster at times. I mean, look at the original game, I think that speaks for itself. But what they managed to accomplish here really nails the vibes that each map is supposed to have. From the uneasy, almost nostalgic feeling Green Hill has turned into, to the confusing and eerie layout behind Hill Gym, to the mechanical and industrial workings of You Can't Run, and even making Not Perfect feel as vibrant and gimmicky as the original iteration of it. Call me crazy, but I love that so much because it makes these iterations of the maps feel way more unique, way more interesting to play on for both sides, mind you, compared to what the other games typically tend to make. This isn't coming out of hate for these other games either, I want to specify that right now. Those maps did them fine, like they're fine. However, I think this map and these games, these maps especially understood what each map is supposed to feel like. And they really managed to incorporate that into the gameplay without being janky or unpolished in how they did it. Another thing to bring up, despite every map being so unique, is that every single map has the same level of insane detail behind them, probably being one of the first things that most people are going to notice upon booting up and playing this game. The environmental details are insanely high quality. The atmosphere around you as you're playing through each round is consistently immersive. The sound and the visual effects are so well done, and they're distinct so that you know what's going on during gameplay, and it sounds like it fits that character. And the soundtrack, oh, don't get me started on the soundtrack. There is not a single bad track in this soundtrack. The ambience tracks, the chase tracks, the last man standing tracks, the ending tracks, the menu tracks, the shop track. Every single one is so good. Some of them are literal heaven in my ears. And all of these things combined is just such an immersive experience that very few games, not only in this genre, but just as a whole, can even compare to or rival when it comes to Roblox. I'm already really excited because this team has just some insane talent behind them. With their modeling team, their composers, their map designers, the coders that all of these people work on. All these people are insanely talented. And what they've already made and have presented to us in this version of the game, version 0.1 mind you, is so immersive, so unique, and so polished that it just blows so many other games out of the water from the get-go. And I'm really excited to see what they continue to do from here. The last thing that I want to bring up is the amount of customization that this game has and the level of detail not only going into the game, but even in moments outside the game, like the shop, the inventory, the menus. The shop is an entirely separate menu, even fitted with a voice-acted shopkeeper that did a great job, mind you, and the menu itself is really clean and really polished for an early iteration of the shop. One thing that immediately stood out to me about this game is that there aren't quote-unquote skins in this game. Rather, each section of the character is a totally different customizable part, with 3 parts for the body, an accessory tab, different colors, which is probably the closest thing you'll see to like skins, and emotes, which come with special music and special effects. It's just crazy that there's this much customization and this much of a varied selection for customization already. And all of it looks really good too. Even like the joke things like Tails getting a fade cut with Asriel, or turning 2011X into Hatsune Miku. Yes, this is a real thing. These are real things, and they're hilarious, but they also look so good on the characters. What's even cooler is they made a whole separate area just for outfitting and viewing your customization here. And I love that not only do you have this whole unique area just for customization, and then going to this inventory area and being able to outfit your characters however you would like, but the place itself has some really cool detail behind it, and it's so relaxing compared to anywhere else in the game. I just thought that was a really nice touch, and I wanted to bring it up somewhere, so here it is. There is one little nitpick I do want to throw in here, but it's a really simple fix, and I think they're already planning it in a future update. That's just info cards on survivors. Currently, from what I've noticed, the only information that you can get is for 2011X, the killer of the game, which is nice, don't get me wrong, that is really nice, but it makes finding information for the other survivor characters in the game, which I would argue are harder to get a grasp of, especially characters like Amy or Sonic who have some pretty specific gimmicks to them. It makes it hard to understand them or why certain things are happening until you realize it's just because of how they're made. Info cards are a huge necessity for players who are new to the game trying to understand what's going on, and so it would be really nice if there was info cards that are easy to access in this game as well, just so that you don't have to get external help when it comes to learning these characters. So I do hope that's an early addition to the game. One final thing I want to mention is the menu screen is absolutely awesome. I don't think I've seen any other game pull off a menu screen in this genre the way they did it, and it's just such a great way to boot up the game. The music, the vibe, the background, it's just like a chef's kiss, literal chef's kiss. I'm still surprised by the amount of customization that this game has, and given that this game has a lot of replay value as early as version 0.1, I think this is going to be a huge benefit down the line, and seeing the same amount of polish in things even as small as the customization and the shop and the menus is a huge upside for seeing how much passion and talent and polish this game is going to have. This game has already shown that it has the potential to become one of the best ASIM games in modern Roblox. The gameplay is borderline addicting, the detail is insane, the passion is just oozing from every crevice of this game. I seriously believe that this game deserves more attention than what it's getting right now, and that's coming from already having thousands of players for a player count and a fan base. There's just so much to love about what this game is offering, and this is only version 0.1. There's still so much more to come, and even some of the gripes that I've already previously mentioned are things that are already being looked into, so it's only a matter of time before these issues I have are also being resolved. If you haven't checked this game out yet, and you enjoy this style of games like I do, which I know a lot of people do, I mean, look at the player counts on Forsaken, for example, please go give this game a try. There is so much to love and so much to enjoy with this game, and I'm super excited to see where this game goes from here because there is already so much exciting content planned and tweaks to improve the already immersive and enjoyable experience that this game offers. As it stands right now, this is my favorite ASIM game to play, and potentially can be for a very long time. I might even do a ranking eventually, going over all the different ASIM games on here and just ranking them based on my personal enjoyment, but I'm going to say it right now, this is going up as my current favorite. There's just so much to love and even more to look forward to, and it makes it so that you can just be excited for this game. You can be happy for what this game offers and excited for what this game is planning and what it can become. The current state of the game is in a really, really good place, despite some of the nitpicks I've said, that every time I boot this game up, I know I'm going to be in for a very, very fun and great time. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings about this game. I hope you also have fun playing it, and if not, hey, that's fine. I'm just glad you tried it out. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I'll see y'all soon.